Across America, crime is no longer lurking in the shadows. It is standing in plain sight, gripping entire cities and pulling them into collapse. In the year 2024, the nation recorded over 1.2 million violent crimes, assaults, robberies, and murders, leaving no community untouched. But some cities have fallen further than the rest, places where the homicide rate rivals war zones, where carjackings happen in broad daylight, where residents flee not for opportunity, but for survival. And the damage does not stop with the violence. It sets off a chain reaction. Businesses shuttering, jobs vanishing, schools emptying, tax revenues shrinking, and neighborhoods hollowing into silence. Crime doesn't just take lives, it destroys economies. Tonight, we take you inside 10 American cities where crime is destroying the economy in 2025. Cities where the numbers are staggering, the scars are permanent, and the future grows darker by the day. St. Louis, Missouri. In the year 2022, this city's murder rate soared to nearly 70 murders for every 100,000 residents. That is more than 30 times higher than London, Paris, or Berlin. For decades, St. Louis has carried the same infamous title, America's murder capital. But crime in St. Louis was never just about danger on the streets. Each act of violence carried an economic price. Every carjacking, every shooting, every assault translated into lost dollars. Businesses boarded their doors, shoppers stayed home, investment dried up. By 2024, nearly half of downtown storefronts sat empty, and entire blocks had been reduced to ghost corridors. Families watched the decline unfold in real time. When schools began losing funding, when sanitation crews were cut back, when entire neighborhoods felt abandoned, parents made the choice they felt they had to make. They packed their belongings into moving trucks, put up for sale signs, and fled for safer ground. Some went to the suburbs, others crossed into Illinois. Each family that left meant one more taxpayer gone, one more hole in the city's budget, and one more reminder that collapse does not reverse easily. The numbers show the damage. In 1950, St. Louis had more than 850,000 residents. Today, fewer than 290,000 remain. The population drain is not only about economics, it is about survival. When parents believe their children cannot walk to school safely, or when families worry that their savings are trapped in a house losing value, leaving becomes the only option. And while the murder rate has fallen in the last 2 years, the scars are too deep to heal quickly. In 2024, city leaders celebrated a decline in homicides. But those numbers did not refill empty classrooms. They did not reopen shuttered businesses. They did not bring families back. This is the chain reaction that defines St. Louis. Violence sparks fear. Fear drives businesses out. Business closures wipe out jobs. Jobs lost shrink the tax base. And when the tax base collapses, families flee. Today, downtown remains dotted with empty storefronts and silent office towers. Entire neighborhoods are a patchwork of occupied homes and boarded-up shells. The city's reputation continues to weigh on property values, making recovery harder with each passing year. St. Louis stands as a warning, a city where crime did not just take lives. It destroyed the economy, hollowed out neighborhoods, and drove families away. And even as the homicide numbers tick downward, the collapse remains. Detroit, Michigan. In the year 2023, more than 10,000 vehicles were stolen within the city limits, the highest total in over 15 years. That means, on average, a car was stolen nearly every 50 minutes. For families trying to live and work in Detroit, crime didn't just mean danger, it meant financial collapse. The wave of auto theft sent shockwaves through Detroit's fragile economy. Insurance premiums skyrocketed, with some households paying more than $6,000 a year, more than many spent on their mortgage. National insurers pulled out of entire zip codes, refusing to write new policies. Suddenly, simply owning a car in the Motor City became a luxury only the wealthy could afford. For businesses, the theft epidemic was devastating. Delivery companies reported double-digit losses as vans disappeared. Auto parts shops were burglarized over and over again. Restaurants saw fewer customers as people avoided downtown, worried their cars would be broken into while they ate. By the end of 2023, dozens of small businesses had shuttered, citing theft, vandalism, and impossible insurance costs as the breaking point. The ripple effects spread quickly. With fewer businesses operating, fewer jobs remained. Downtown vacancy rates rose above 25%. Developers scaled back projects. Families who once believed in Detroit's comeback packed up and left, looking for safer suburbs where insurance was affordable and jobs were more secure. This is the chain reaction of crime in Detroit. A car stolen on one block meant a small business shutting down on another. Business closures meant job losses meant shrinking tax revenues, and a shrinking tax base meant schools and services went underfunded, leaving families with fewer reasons to stay. Detroit's story is not just about crime. It is about how violence and theft dismantle the very foundation of a city. From 1.8 million residents in 1950 to barely 630,000 today, Detroit has been hollowed out by decades of decline. The auto theft crisis is only the latest chapter in a collapse that continues to drive families away. Even as city leaders tout new development and entertainment venues, the reality is hard to escape. A city cannot rebuild if its families are still fleeing. Detroit remains a cautionary tale of how crime doesn't just steal property, it destroys economies, and it forces people to leave behind the places they once called home. Baltimore, Maryland. In the year 2022, this city crossed a grim milestone. More than 300 homicides for the 8th year in a row. Year after year, the body count stacked up, giving Baltimore one of the highest murder rates in America. But the tragedy isn't just measured in lives lost. Crime here has shredded the local economy. Downtown once bustled with shops, offices, and tourists near the Inner Harbor. Today, nearly half of retail space sits vacant. Businesses cite constant theft, security costs, and the fear that customers no longer feel safe. National retailers that once anchored downtown have walked away, leaving behind dark storefronts and empty corridors. The ripple effects extend far beyond boarded-up shops. With fewer businesses operating, thousands of jobs have disappeared. City revenues that once flowed from sales and property taxes have slowed to a trickle. The budget gaps are visible everywhere. Underfunded schools, unreliable transit, neglected sanitation. For families, the tipping point has long since arrived. Parents see classrooms with fewer teachers and limited resources. They see trash piling on their block, while property taxes climb higher. They see corner stores close down, forcing longer drives for basic groceries. They watch drug markets operate in plain sight and wonder if their children will be safe walking home. The result is predictable. Those who can leave, do. Between 2010 and 2020, Baltimore lost more than 35,000 residents. The outflow hasn't slowed. Families are leaving for surrounding counties in Maryland or moving farther to Pennsylvania and Virginia. Every departure drains the city of not only people, but of stability, income, and hope. Baltimore's struggle is not a mystery. A city cannot thrive when fear outpaces opportunity. When the cost of safety becomes too high, when businesses cannot survive, when families no longer believe their children have a future in the city, decline becomes inevitable. The story of Baltimore is more than a homicide statistic. It is the unraveling of confidence in a city's ability to provide the basics of a functioning society. Even as civic leaders tout redevelopment plans or promise new crime-fighting strategies, the scars are visible in boarded windows and endless for sale signs. Baltimore is not only a city wrestling with violence, it is a city bleeding away its people, its businesses, and its lifeblood. Crime here does not just end lives. It pushes entire communities to pack up and leave, one household at a time. Cleveland, Ohio. In the year 2022, this city recorded a violent crime rate of more than 1,600 incidents per 100,000 residents, nearly 4 times the national average. Assaults, robberies, and shootings became part of daily life, giving Cleveland one of the highest crime rates in the Midwest. But violence was only the spark. The greater damage came in the form of confidence lost. When people no longer feel safe, commerce dries up. Tower City Center, once envisioned as a vibrant retail hub, now sits half empty. Vacancies echo through downtown as shops close their doors, citing theft, vandalism, or simply the lack of customers willing to venture out after dark. As businesses leave, jobs vanish with them. The loss of employment deepens poverty in surrounding neighborhoods, trapping families in decline. Property tax revenues shrink, making it harder for the city to fund services that might stabilize communities. It is a slow unraveling. One closure here, one lost paycheck there, until entire blocks feel abandoned. For families, the consequences are personal. Parents see schools struggling to retain teachers, They see boarded-up corner stores and grocery gaps where options once existed. They watch neighbors move away and wonder whether staying behind is worth the risk. Many decide it is not. Cleveland has been losing population for decades. From a peak of more than 900,000 residents in 1950, the city has dwindled to under 370,000 today. Each family that leaves takes stability with them. Each vacant house becomes a reminder of what has been lost. The violence of the streets is obvious, but the quieter collapse is just as devastating. Empty offices signal lost investment. Hollowed-out shopping centers reflect a downtown that no longer draws people in. Neighborhoods pockmarked with vacant homes tell of families who could not see a future here. Cleveland's story is a lesson in how fear erodes prosperity. A violent crime statistic may grab headlines, but the lasting wound is economic. Without jobs, without businesses, without families willing to stay, a city cannot sustain itself. Even as new developments and sports arenas are promoted as signs of revival, the everyday experience tells a harsher truth. Too many storefronts remain dark. Too many families continue to leave. And until Cleveland can prove it is not only safer but stable, the exodus will continue. Cleveland is more than a city with a high crime rate. It is a city where the erosion of safety has steadily drained the lifeblood of commerce, community, and people. Little Rock, Arkansas. In 2022, this city posted a violent crime rate of more than 1,800 incidents per 100,000 residents, one of the highest in the United States. On a per capita basis, Little Rock was more dangerous than cities many times its size. But the problem was never just about statistics. High-profile shootings and robberies began to define the city's image, making headlines that scared off more than just residents. They drove away investment. Downtown's River Market District, once a bright spot for restaurants, tourism, and nightlife, has become a shell of its former self. Businesses close early, or close entirely, citing safety as the reason. When a city's heart no longer feels safe, the whole economy suffers. Restaurants lose diners. Hotels lose bookings. Conferences choose safer locations. Each decision erases jobs and drains tax revenue. By 2024, Little Rock's downtown vacancy rate had climbed into the mid-20s, and the optimism of the 2000s had been replaced by shuttered storefronts and quiet streets. For families, the consequences are immediate. Parents watch as schools struggle to keep teachers and resources. They see neighborhood shops closing and once busy parks left empty. They ask themselves whether staying in the city is worth it. Many decide it is not. Families with means retreat to the suburbs, while those who remain are left with rising crime, fewer opportunities, and declining property values. Population growth has stalled. While much of the South has boomed in recent years, Little Rock lags behind, weighed down by its reputation as unsafe. Housing values trail other metro areas. Middle-class families continue to choose Benton, Bryant, and Conway instead of the capital city. This is how crime hollowed out Little Rock. Not with one big collapse, but through countless small decisions. A diner that closed early, a family that moved away, an event that chose another venue. Piece by piece, confidence drained away until entire blocks felt empty. Even as civic leaders promise revitalization, residents know the reality. The fear of violence keeps families out of downtown, keeps investors looking elsewhere, and keeps children from playing freely in their own neighborhoods. Little Rock is not just a capital city with a high crime rate. It is a capital city whose economy and future are being undercut by the perception and the reality of danger. Crime here is not only destroying lives, it is chasing away businesses, families, and the promise of growth. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. In 2022, this city recorded a violent crime rate of over 1,500 incidents per 100,000 residents, among the highest in the nation. For a city of just over 200,000 people, the scale of violence was overwhelming. But the problem wasn't only the crime itself. Violence bled into the economy, eroding stability one closure at a time. National chains like CVS and local grocery stores shut down locations, citing theft and security concerns. When pharmacies and supermarkets close, it isn't just lost jobs. It forces residents to travel farther for basic needs, often through neighborhoods already plagued by danger. The fallout was immediate. Fewer stores meant less sales tax. By 2024, revenue shortfalls forced Baton Rouge to make cuts. Police response times stretched, sanitation slowed, and community programs vanished. Residents saw the city providing less, even as risks mounted. Small businesses faced the same dilemma. Insurance premiums spiked. Shoplifting and vandalism became constant threats. Some closed early each night, others shut down entirely. Vacant storefronts multiplied, turning once active corridors into lifeless stretches. Families responded the only way they could. They left. Those with the means relocated to nearby parishes, exchanging the convenience of the capital for a greater sense of safety. Suburbs expanded, while Baton Rouge's core neighborhoods hollowed out. Property values stagnated. Schools lost students, merging classes because there were fewer children left. The city's reputation suffered. Investors shifted focus to safer regions. Conventions that could have filled hotels and restaurants went elsewhere. Crime wasn't just altering daily life, it was reshaping the city's future. What makes Baton Rouge's decline distinct is scale. This isn't a massive metropolis where losses disappear into millions of residents. It's a mid-sized capital city where every shuttered store or relocated family leaves a visible scar. Each closure removes services, each departure shrinks the tax base, every incident of violence undermines confidence that recovery is possible. Even with efforts to curb crime, momentum has been hard to reverse. Streets scarred by violence, vacant commercial properties, and declining revenues present a sobering picture. Baton Rouge has become an example of how unchecked crime undermines more than safety. It undermines services, stability, and the promise of growth. For those still here, the question is no longer whether crime affects the economy. The question is whether the economy can endure long enough for the city to recover. New Orleans, Louisiana, in 2022, the city's murder rate soared past 70 homicides per 100,000 residents, one of the highest in the United States and more than 10 times the national average. For a city celebrated as a cultural capital, the headlines were devastating. But the deeper damage struck the very industry that sustains New Orleans: tourism. Each year, millions once filled Bourbon Street, French Quarter, restaurants, and convention halls. When shootings lead, the evening news and carjackings become daily events, that image of celebration and hospitality begins to crumble. Visitors cancel trips, hotel rooms sit empty, and restaurants close earlier than ever before. Tourism is New Orleans' lifeblood, feeding hotels, restaurants, musicians, and small businesses across the French Quarter. When that flow weakens, the whole economy feels the hit. Bartenders, hotel clerks, and performers lose wages. Shopkeepers, who once counted on steady streams of visitors, face days with little or no business. The energy that defined the Big Easy feels muted. Residents live with the fallout. Slower tourism means shrinking tax revenues, and shrinking revenues mean fewer services. Festivals and parades that should bring pride struggle to thrive under the shadow of violence. Families weigh their options. Parents see headlines labeling their city unsafe and worry about the long-term impact on property values and schools. They watch friends pack up and move to the suburbs or out of state entirely. Every departure leaves another vacant home, another quiet street, another reminder that optimism has drained away. What makes New Orleans' decline distinct is its double burden. It is losing both residents and outsiders. Fewer families want to raise children where gunfire is common. Fewer businesses want to invest in a downtown visitors are learning to avoid. The city is bleeding people, money, and reputation all at once. Even as leaders announce new crime prevention programs and redevelopment projects, the perception of danger spreads faster than solutions. And perception is powerful. A city built on attracting visitors cannot afford to be branded as unsafe. New Orleans is more than a homicide statistic. It is a place where crime has put identity itself at risk. When violence drives away not only families, but also the visitors who keep its economy alive, the price is measured in lost jobs, lost culture, and lost trust. Until safety returns, the Big Easy's spirit and its economy will remain under siege. Albuquerque, New Mexico. In 2022, this city recorded one of the highest property crime rates in the nation. Burglaries, break-ins, and auto thefts dominated police reports. By 2023, more than 11,000 vehicles were stolen, one of the highest totals in America for a city of its size. But the impact wasn't limited to crime statistics. It landed directly in household budgets. As thefts soared, insurance companies raised premiums across the metro, in some cases doubling rates. For working families already stretched thin, that meant less money for rent, food, or savings. Many faced a difficult choice: pay thousands more to protect a car, or move to a safer suburb where coverage was affordable. Businesses felt the strain just as sharply. Storefronts along Central Avenue reported repeated break-ins, windows smashed multiple times a year, shelves stripped bare by theft. Even with upgraded security systems, the cycle continued. Some owners endured the costs, but many closed permanently, leaving empty windows and darkened corridors in their place. The economic consequences spread quickly. Fewer businesses meant fewer jobs, rising premiums pushed more families out. Downtown vacancy climbed, and investment stalled as the city's reputation for crime overshadowed redevelopment efforts. For families, the reality became exhausting. Parents returned to find broken car windows. Workers discovered their vehicles gone before morning shifts. Social media feeds filled with reports of stolen bikes, packages, and tools. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the constant weight of living under threat. Middle-class families began to retreat to Rio Rancho and nearby communities. Population growth slowed. Property values in core neighborhoods lagged behind the rest of the booming Southwest. Equity that could have revitalized Albuquerque instead flowed outward as families bought homes elsewhere. Albuquerque's struggle is not about a single crime statistic. It is about how relentless theft undermines confidence. When residents stop believing their cars, homes, or businesses can be secured, they stop investing in the city. The loss compounds, leaving fewer families, fewer jobs, and fewer reasons to stay. Even with leaders touting new policing strategies and redevelopment programs, the scars remain visible. Boarded windows, rising insurance bills, and families loading moving trucks. Albuquerque stands as a warning. Property crime may not dominate national headlines the way homicides do, but left unchecked, it can hollow out a city just as completely. Jackson, Mississippi. In 2022, the city reported a homicide rate of more than 100 per 100,000 residents, one of the highest in America. For a city of fewer than 150,000 people, the scale of violence was extraordinary. But crime wasn't the only crisis hollowing out Jackson. The city's infrastructure was already breaking under the strain. In the summer of 2022, Jackson's water system failed, leaving more than 160,000 residents without safe running water for weeks. It was a turning point. Violence and failing services collided, convincing many families that the capital of Mississippi could no longer provide even the basics. The combination proved devastating for the local economy. Businesses that once operated in the heart of Jackson shut down or relocated, unwilling to risk theft on top of unreliable utilities. Downtown office towers emptied out, and small businesses in surrounding neighborhoods closed after break-ins or repeated water outages. Commercial corridors that once carried steady traffic became dotted with "for lease" signs and shuttered storefronts. For residents, daily life became an exercise in frustration and fear. Parents carried bottled water into kitchens and schools while worrying about their children walking home through unsafe streets. Families questioned whether property values could survive in a city defined by crime headlines and collapsing infrastructure. Many chose to leave to suburbs like Madison or farther afield to entirely new states. The impact shows in the numbers. Jackson has lost more than 10% of its population in the last decade. Each family departure drains the tax base further, leaving fewer dollars to fix roads, pay teachers, or repair the very water system that drove them out. With every cut, conditions worsen and confidence erodes further. What sets Jackson apart is how multiple crises reinforce one another. High crime pushes businesses away. Failing water and utilities drive families out. The tax base shrinks, and with it, the ability to repair the very problems that cause the decline. It is a cycle that leaves residents asking not just whether the city is safe, but whether it is functional at all. Even as state and federal aid arrives, the scars remain. Blocks of abandoned houses, empty downtown offices, and residents still skeptical of whether the water will run tomorrow reflect the depth of the collapse. Jackson is not simply another American city struggling with crime. It is a capital city where violence and infrastructure breakdown have converged, dismantling confidence in the most basic functions of urban life. And until both safety and stability return, more families will decide their future lies elsewhere. Memphis, Tennessee. In 2022, the city reported a violent crime rate of more than 2,300 incidents per 100,000 residents, the highest among large American cities. Homicides, robberies, and carjackings dominated headlines, giving Memphis a reputation as one of the most dangerous places in the nation. But what truly set Memphis apart was how quickly crime reshaped its economy. Major retailers, including Walmart, Walgreens, and Family Dollar shuttered locations, citing constant theft, assaults in parking lots, and security costs that made operations impossible. Each closure wasn't just a lost storefront. It meant fewer jobs, fewer places to shop, and fewer anchors to keep neighborhoods stable. Downtown Memphis, once envisioned as a revitalized core, has struggled to hold momentum. Restaurants and small businesses face the double pressure of rising crime and declining foot traffic. Many close early, while others close altogether. Empty retail windows now line streets that only a few years ago were marketed as symbols of renewal. The collapse of retail feeds directly into family decisions. Parents no longer see Memphis as a place to raise children when grocery stores and pharmacies vanish from their neighborhoods. Households that can afford to move are leaving at some of the highest rates in the South. Between 2020 and 2023 alone, thousands of residents relocated to safer suburbs in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. The exodus shows in the housing market. Certain neighborhoods face rows of for sale signs, while property values stagnate or fall. Schools lose students, forcing budget cuts and staff reductions. Each departure makes recovery harder because the tax base shrinks as needs grow larger. What makes Memphis unique is the pace of decline. Other cities struggle with crime, but few have seen such an immediate and visible connection between violence, business closures, and families fleeing. Within a single year, entire retail corridors lost multiple national chains. Within a few more, those closures translated into fewer jobs, fewer families, and emptier neighborhoods. Even as civic leaders announce new anti-crime initiatives and redevelopment plans, residents know the stakes. Memphis isn't just fighting to reduce crime statistics. It is fighting to hold on to its population, its businesses, and its future. For many families, the decision has already been made. They are leaving behind the city they once called home, and every moving truck that pulls away from Memphis is more than a personal choice. It is another sign that crime here isn't just dangerous. It is dismantling the very economy of the city. Memphis has become a warning to the rest of America. When violent crime drives away businesses and pushes families out, decline doesn't take decades. It can happen in just a few short years. Across America, the story is repeating itself. From St. Louis to Memphis, from Baltimore to Albuquerque, families are leaving behind the cities they once called home. The reasons may differ: violent crime, car theft, retail collapse, or even failing infrastructure. But the outcome is always the same. Businesses close, jobs disappear, tax revenues dry up, and neighborhoods that once thrived are left hollow. These 10 cities are not just struggling with high crime rates. They are facing the collapse of their economic foundations. When residents no longer believe their communities can offer safety, stability, or opportunity, they leave. And when families leave, businesses follow, schools shrink, and the cycle deepens. This is not only a public safety crisis, it is an economic crisis reshaping the future of America's cities. The question now is not just which city will be next, but how many more will see their economies dismantled by unchecked crime. Because when crime takes root in a city, it doesn't just take lives, it destroys economies, and it drives families out. If you found this video eye-opening and want to stay informed about the cities and states shaping America's future, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next deep dive.